December 27th, 1941. Naval General Staff Headquarters, Tokyo. A cold winter wind rattles the wooden shutters of the intelligence wing as Rear Admiral Ryunosuke Kusaka steps quickly across the polished floorboards. The corridors smell of ink, tobacco, and faint diesel drifting from the harbor below. Outside, the sun has barely risen, yet the building hums with urgent activity. Messengers running between rooms, officers poring over maps, telegraph operators tapping out coded bursts of triumph. Japan is celebrating. America, they believe, is broken. Kusaka pauses at the threshold of the strategy chamber. The sliding door opens to reveal a long table covered in maps of the Pacific, red arrows sweeping across the ocean like sharp blades. Around it stand some of the most powerful men in the Imperial Japanese Navy. Vice Admiral Osami Nagano, Admiral Isuruku Yamamoto, staff officers, and several younger commanders eager to prove themselves. At the far end of the table lies a report stamped with bold black kanji. Assessment of American Naval Replacement Capacity. Nagano taps the report with a fountain pen. Gentlemen, our victory at Pearl Harbor has bought us time, perhaps years. Their carriers are limited, their battleships shattered, their industrial output, he smirks faintly, is slower and softer than their newspapers claim. A ripple of laughter passes through the room. Commander Takashi Shimara leans back confidently, the smoke from his cigarette curling upward. Even if America begins building carriers today, they cannot replace them faster than we can sink them. A shipyard cannot conjure a fleet overnight. Kusaka listens quietly. He remembers the burning hawks still resting on the bottom of Pearl Harbor, the plumes of smoke rising over Oahu, a strike so devastating that even he doubted the Americans could recover. And yet, a nagging thought claws at him. America's coastline stretches thousands of miles. Its industrial base dwarfs Japan's. It possesses steel, oil, manpower, resources Japan could not dream of matching. But inside this room, no one feels threatened. Shimada flicks ash onto the floor. Intelligence estimates they can produce 2, perhaps 3 fleet carriers within 4 years. He shrugs. We will have already secured the Pacific by then. More soft chuckles. Another officer murmurs, the Americans build automobiles, not warships. Kusaka studies the hand-drawn chart pinned to the wall. Outdated estimates, incomplete figures, overly optimistic projections. Japan believes the United States is bound by the same constraints they face: limited dock space, shortages of steel, tight bottlenecks in skilled labor. What they failed to grasp is that American factories will not build carriers the way Japan does. They will not build them slowly. They will not treat each ship like a handcrafted jewel. They will build them like products, standardized, modular, repeatable. But inside Tokyo, the idea is unthinkable. A messenger enters, bows, and hands Nagano a decoded cable from the combined fleet. Nagano reads aloud. Carrier Yorktown sighted supporting Wake Island evacuation. Operational capacity remains high. American resistance increasing. The room falls silent for a moment. Then Shimada laughs. They limp along with 3 carriers and still they fight as if they have 10. Let them, another commander adds. Once our pilots meet them, they will lose those carriers too. America cannot afford such losses. Kusaka turns toward the window. Outside, snow begins to drift gently over Tokyo Harbor. Merchant ships and destroyers sit at anchor, many waiting for repair crews, metal workers, and fuel, all in short supply. Japan is already stretched thin, yet the officers around him speak as though victory is inevitable. Nagano's voice cuts through the haze. Our path is clear. Strike aggressively, expand quickly, destroy American carriers whenever possible. They cannot rebuild them fast enough to challenge us. Kusaka opens his mouth to speak, to warn, to question, but the room's certainty swallows him whole. He feels like a lone voice standing against a storm of confidence. Instead, he bows his head. Understood, sir. As the meeting ends, officers gather around the map, joking quietly about how American shipyards must struggle even to replace civilian vessels. One man quips, "Perhaps they will turn their car factories into shipyards next." More laughter. Yet far across the Pacific, in the industrial sprawl of Newport News, a construction foreman is already drilling instructions into a line of workers about a new kind of warship. Longer deck, stronger frame, modular assembly. The blueprints are thicker, the hull plates larger, the deadlines impossibly short. They will meet them anyway. As Kusaka exits the building, he hears temple bells ringing faintly in the cold air. Tokyo is calm, orderly, confident, a capital certain that the war will be short, decisive, controlled. No one here can imagine that within 2 years, America will launch carriers faster than Japan can count them. No one here believes the Pacific will soon fill with an entirely new class of ship, 24 of them, emerging one after another like steel giants rolling off an assembly line. For now, Japan laughs. But the laughter will not last.
April 5, 1942. Newport News Shipbuilding, Virginia. The clang of hammers and the hiss of welding torches echo across the shipyard long before sunrise. Sparks rain like fiery waterfalls from the skeletal frames of hull sections rising from the dry docks. Foreman Charles Whitaker steps onto a catwalk, coffee steaming in the early spring cold, and stares at the enormous steel ribs of a carrier taking shape beneath him. Below, hundreds, soon thousands of workers swarm across scaffolding, cranes, and open platforms, their movements synchronized like an industrial orchestra. Most have never seen the ocean beyond Chesapeake Bay. Many were factory workers days earlier from Detroit, Pittsburgh, Chicago, now transformed into wartime shipbuilders seemingly overnight. Whitaker lifts a clipboard, bracing himself as a gust of wind tosses sawdust and metal filings into the air. Essex-Class, hull number CV9, he murmurs. The first of its kind. The first of what would become 24. A whistle signals shift change, and workers pour across the yard wearing tool belts, goggles, and soot-streaked uniforms. Women fresh from assembly lines greet ex-steel workers from Pennsylvania. Elderly machinists from shuttered factories stand shoulder to shoulder with black welders from Norfolk, all drawn into the monumental effort. America is building, not cautiously, not slowly, but with a ferocity no one in Tokyo has imagined. Whitaker raises his voice over the noise. We're already behind schedule on the flight deck beams. Move! A welder salutes mockingly. We're moving faster than the blueprints, boss! Whitaker grins despite himself. This is what Japan failed to understand. America's advantage isn't mastery of the sea. It is mastery of production. Meanwhile, across the Pacific. July 2nd, 1942. Combined Fleet Headquarters, Hashijima Anchorage, Japan. Rear Admiral Kusaka steps aboard the battleship Yamato, greeted by the deep rumble of her engines and the distant thrum of preparations for another Pacific operation. Officers bustle across the deck carrying logs, dispatches, and intelligence reports. He enters the strategy room, where Vice Admiral Chuichi Magumo, still haunted by Midway, hunches over a table littered with reconnaissance photos. Kusaka clears his throat. "Nagumo-san, we have new intelligence." Nagumo does not look up. "Another estimate of American losses?" Kusaka shakes his head. "Of their production." Now Nagumo looks up. He lays down a telegram from the Foreign Ministry. Reports from Washington confirm rapid mobilization. Factories are being converted. New shipyards are expanding. Shimada, standing by the window, scoffs. Converted into what? Fishing boats? The Americans cannot simply decide to build warships and produce them instantly. Kusaka exhales slowly. They have begun construction on a new class of fleet carrier, the Essex-Class. Nagumo stiffens. "How many?" Kusaka hesitates. "Intelligence suggests many." "Many?" Shimada laughs. "Do they grow on trees?" Kusaka spreads several photographs on the table, blurry, grainy, taken by diplomats before they fled America. They show enormous steel frames rising out of fog and scaffolding. Nagumo studies them with a narrowed gaze. "These are not mock-ups," he says. "They are not," Kusaka replies quietly. Shimada waves a hand dismissively. "Even if they build one or two, we will destroy them." Kusaka answers with an uncharacteristic sharpness. "They are not building one or two." The room falls silent. He continues. "We do not yet know how many, but their industrial base dwarfs ours. If they choose to build carriers as they build automobiles..." Nagumo finishes the sentence with a whisper. "They will outnumber us." For several seconds, no one speaks. Thunder rolls across the anchorage. The Yamato creaks softly as the tide shifts beneath her hull. Nagumo clasps his hands behind his back. "Admiral Yamamoto once warned that we could run wild for 6 months, perhaps a year, but that beyond that, the industrial power of America would consume us." He turns slowly toward the window, watching the gray sea. "How long since Pearl Harbor?" 7 months, Kusaka answers. Nagumo closes his eyes briefly, as though feeling something heavy settle on his shoulders. "The countdown has begun," he murmurs. Back in the United States. October 11th, 1942, Brooklyn Navy Yard, New York. Steam whistles scream across the skyline as cranes lift giant prefabricated sections into place. 2 hulls rise side by side like twin mountains of steel. Workers shout over the roar of rivet guns. A reporter shouts to a foreman, "How many more after these?" The foreman laughs breathlessly. "As many as the Navy wants. We'll build one every few months if they tell us to." A nearby officer grins. "Every few months? Try every few weeks." The reporter's eyes widen. Across America, dozens of shipyards echo the same unstoppable energy. Philadelphia, Quincy, San Francisco, all racing the clock, all feeding an industrial beast that is only gaining momentum. America is building itself. Again, a fleet of ships. Not in years, but soon. Very soon.
March 14th, 1943. Kure Naval Base, Japan. Dawn breaks cold and pale over Hiroshima Bay as a thin layer of fog clings to the steel armor of battleships resting at anchor. Rear Admiral Kusaka walks briskly along the pier toward the administrative building, his boots echoing across the wet planks. A courier rushes beside him, arms full of decoded intercepts and diplomatic reports. Inside the intelligence chamber, the atmosphere is strained. Officers speak in hushed tones. Some stare in disbelief at newly arrived documents pinned across the wall. A thick binder labeled U.S. Naval Construction Progress lies open on a metal table, its pages covered in figures that seem almost impossible. Vice Admiral Shigeru Fukudome turns as Kusaka enters. His expression is tense, his jaw tight. "You need to see this," he says, sliding a stack of reports forward. Kusaka begins reading. Carrier Essex, CV-9, launched. Carrier Yorktown, new, CV-10, nearing completion. Carrier Intrepid, CV-11, fitting out. Carrier Hornet, new, CV-12, under assembly. Carrier Franklin, CV-13, keel laid. The list continues, and continues, and continues. The pages feel heavy in Kusaka's hands. He exhales sharply. "This must be an exaggeration." Fukudome shakes his head. "Unfortunately, no. American production is accelerating. Their shipyards are expanding capacity faster than we anticipated." Commander Shimada bursts through the door, face pale. "Another update. The Philadelphia Naval Shipyard has begun simultaneous construction of multiple Essex-Class hulls." He swallows hard. Simultaneously. Even Nagano's old projection assumed the U.S. could only build such vessels one at a time. Kusaka stares at the photographs clipped to the reports. Enormous dry docks filled with rising steel hulls, welders standing like ants atop curved flight decks, cranes lifting massive keel plates into place. These aren't sketches. These aren't rumors. They are proof. Fukudome reads aloud in disbelief. Estimated American target, 24 fleet carriers. A silence falls so heavy it feels like a physical weight pressing against the room. Nagano rubs his temples. 24! It's impossible! No navy in history has built that many capital ships in such a short period. It isn't impossible, Kusaka says quietly. It's industrialization. Across the Pacific. July 17, 1943. Mare Island Naval Shipyard, California. Steam whistles erupt across the yard as the newly constructed Essex-Class carrier USS Lexington CV-16 slides into the water. Crowds cheer from the shoreline, shipbuilders, families, sailors, engineers, all witnessing the birth of another steel giant. Captain Frederick Sherman observes from the reviewing stand, hands clasped behind him. "How long until the next one?" a congressman asks proudly. Sherman replies without hesitation, 4 months, sir. The congressman laughs. 4 months for a carrier? Not 4 months to start one, 4 months to finish one. The congressman falls silent. Below them, welders and riveters are already preparing the next hull section for another carrier. The shift change whistle blows, and hundreds of workers spill through the gates. Women in overalls, men with lunch pails, young welders with sparks still clinging to their jackets. Unlike Japan, America is not scraping for resources. America is not running out of steel. America is not rationing labor. America is scaling. Every shipyard up and down the coasts reverberates with the same relentless energy. Cranes swing from dawn to dusk. Boilers ignite through the night. Assembly line principles once used for cars now mold aircraft carriers. The Essex-Class is no longer a single warship. It is a production model. Back in Japan, December 2nd, 1943. Hashijima Anchorage. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's former chair sits empty in the combined fleet briefing room, draped in a silent shroud of mourning. His death earlier that year dealt a catastrophic blow to morale. Now his warnings echo louder than ever. Nagamu slams his palm on the table. 24 carriers? How can any nation build so many so quickly? Kusaka remains composed, though inside he feels the same dread. They have the industry, the manpower, the raw materials, and now, he points to a graph, they have the momentum. Shimada leans forward. Even if they build them, they cannot train the air crews fast enough. Kusaka shakes his head. No, they already are. Their pilot training programs are expanding at triple pace. Their aircraft production is staggering. He slides over another document, statistics on F-6 Hellcat production numbers. Shimada's face drains of color. Nagamu lowers himself slowly into a chair. If this continues, our remaining carriers will be overwhelmed. Kusaka nods. Not in years, in months. Thunder rolls outside, echoing across the harbor. It feels like a warning. In America, March 3rd, 1944, Brooklyn Naval Yard. 2 Essex-Class carriers sit nearly complete in the dry dock, their hulls painted, their island structures rising tall above the workers swarming across the decks. A foreman claps a young welder on the shoulder. "Better get used to this sight, kid. We're not just building ships, we're building an armada." The welder smiles proudly. "How many do we need?" "As many as it takes," the foreman answers. Behind them, a crane lowers another prefabricated deck panel onto the next carrier. Steel meets steel with a deep metallic groan, the sound of a nation forging its future. By the spring of 1944, America has already done the unimaginable. It has outproduced every estimate, it has replaced every loss, and it has begun building more carriers than Japan has aircraft. The tide is turning, not at sea, but in the factories.
June 19th, 1944, Philippine Sea. Dawn breaks crimson over a restless horizon as the USS Bunker Hill, one of the newest Essex-Class carriers, slices through the swells accompanied by a vast escort fleet. The carrier's deck swarms with activity, mechanics tightening panels on F-6F Hellcats, ordnance crews loading bombs onto Avengers, pilots strapping into harnesses as engines roar to life. The rising sun glints off the wings of hundreds of aircraft lined in perfect formation across multiple carriers stretching to the curve of the sea. Lieutenant Commander John Jack Reynolds jogs across the flight deck, helmet in hand, the salty wind whipping against his flight suit. He pauses as the deck trembles under the thunder of another Hellcat being catapulted into the air. It climbs sharply into the sky, disappearing into clouds streaked orange by sunrise. "Ready for the biggest day of your life, Jack?" a fellow pilot shouts over the deafening noise. Reynolds smirks. "If half the intel we heard is true, today the Japanese learn what 20 carriers look like." Behind him, the USS Essex, Lexington, Yorktown, Hornet, Bunker Hill, Wasp, Bennington, and more form a steel wall, a floating metropolis of raw industrial might. Pilots nickname it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot before the battle even begins. And across the ocean, Admiral Josaburo Ozawa's mobile fleet approaches. Fewer carriers, fewer planes, fewer experienced pilots. But Ozawa carries something the Americans do not: pride, training, tradition. He stands on the bridge of his flagship, Taiho, hands clasped behind him, the air thick with cigarette smoke and tension. His staff officers relay reconnaissance reports, a vast American fleet advancing rapidly. Ozawa's eyes narrow. "How many?" "Too many to count, sir." Ozawa stiffens. "Impossible. The Americans cannot field such numbers." But they can, and they have. The Essex-Class carriers, steel giants Japan once mocked, have arrived in force. The battle begins.
At 10 a.m., radar operators aboard USS Lexington detect incoming bogies, hundreds of them diving toward Task Force 58. A klaxon blares across every ship. "Enemy raid inbound! All hands to battle stations!" Gunners race to their positions as the sky fills with black bursts of flak. The first wave of Japanese aircraft plunges toward the fleet, but American fighters descend upon them like hawks. Lieutenant Reynolds pushes his Hellcat into a dive, locking on to a Mitsubishi A6M0 below him. He squeezes the trigger. 50 caliber rounds tear into the Zero's fuselage. Flames erupt as it spirals downward. "Splash 1," he calls over the radio. Around him, the air becomes a chaotic ballet of twisting contrails, tracer fire, and exploding aircraft. The Hellcats slash through Japanese formations with brutal efficiency. Japan's once feared Zero fighters cannot match the numbers, the altitude advantage, or the fresh, well-trained pilots. One by one, the attackers fall. A pilot on USS Bunker Hill shouts over palms, "It's a massacre! They keep coming, but they're not making it through!" Below, the anti-aircraft guns erupt again as another wave approaches. But most Japanese planes never reach bombing range. They are shot down miles from the carriers. Ozawa watches his fleet fade. Aboard the Taiho, Ozawa grips the railing until his knuckles whiten. Reports flood the command deck. 60 aircraft lost, another 40 down. Pilots reporting overwhelming fighter opposition. Ozawa whispers, "How many carriers do they have?" Silence. No one answers. He closes his eyes, and for the first time he understands, not tactically, not mathematically, but viscerally, the scale of American production. Essex-Class carriers, dozens of them, rolling out of shipyards like waves. Destroyers escorting them in endless lines. Fighters launching faster than Japan can count. Japan's naval aviators were once the finest in the world. Now they are being thrown into the jaws of an industrial hurricane. The crushing results. By evening, the battle is over. U.S. losses, minimal. Japanese losses, catastrophic. More than 300 aircraft destroyed in a single day, many with irreplaceable veteran pilots. On the flight deck of Bunker Hill, Lieutenant Reynolds climbs from his cockpit, shaking his head. "They never had a chance," he mutters. "How do you fight a nation that builds carriers like we build trucks?" Below deck, a mechanic wipes oil from his hands. "Simple," he says. "You don't." In Japan, July 3, 1944, Naval General Staff, Tokyo. The atmosphere is suffocating. Officers whisper in tones of disbelief as the after-action reports arrive. The Americans deployed more carriers than we believed existed. Hundreds of fighters in the air at once. Their loss is replaced within days. Kusaka closes his eyes as the truth settles fully upon Japan. The Essex-Class carriers are not just warships. They are the visible edge of an industrial empire, a machine Japan cannot outrun, outbuild, or outfight. And the Pacific has turned red with the cost of underestimating them.
October 25, 1944, off the coast of Leyte Gulf. The sea heaves under a storm-gray sky as the Imperial Japanese Navy commits the last of its major surface forces in a desperate gamble to crush the American landings in the Philippines. Admiral Takeo Kurita stands on the bridge of the battleship Yamato, rain battering across the armored glass, lightning splitting the horizon. Behind him, officers cling to hope, or what remains of it. But the ocean ahead glows faintly with orange fire. The unmistakable hum of aircraft engines rolls through the storm like approaching thunder. Kurita's aide leans closer. "Sir, more American aircraft inbound. Too many to count." Kurita's eyes narrow. "From which carriers?" The aide swallows. "All of them."
Kurita grips the railing, staring out at the wall of distant silhouettes, barely visible through the rain. Dozens of American flattops advancing behind the landing force. He counts their shapes, but the horizon blurs before he finishes. The Essex-Class carriers have arrived in their full, terrible number. This is what Japan's commanders could never imagine in 1941. Not 3 carriers, not 5, but a fleet of carriers, so many that defeat becomes a matter of arithmetic. The sky falls. The first wave strikes at 0800 hours. F-6 Hellcats dive through sheets of rain, followed by squadrons of SB-2C Helldivers and TBF Avengers sweeping low over the waves. Bombs drop in synchronized patterns, torpedoes slicing through white-capped water. A junior officer yells over the explosions, "Sir, another wave incoming!" Kurita stares upward, aghast. Another? But the attacks keep coming, again and again and again. The Americans rotate their aircraft seamlessly. As one squadron returns to refuel, another is already screaming down from cloud cover. On the decks of the Essex-Class carriers, ordnance crews move in almost mechanical rhythm. Bombs loaded, engines primed, pilots waved forward by yellow-shirted deck crew. The carriers themselves do not seem strained. They do not pause. They feed the sky with steel. It becomes brutally clear. Japan is not losing to pilots. Japan is losing to production. Japan confronts the numbers. November 9, 1944, Tokyo. A cold silence fills the Naval General Staff war room as the latest intelligence summary arrives. The officer who carries it can barely meet the eyes of his superiors. He places the report on the table and steps back as though the paper itself carries a curse. Admiral Minechi Koga unfolds it. His eyes scan the lines. 1 carrier commissioned in January, another in March, 2 more in May, 3 more in July, and more on the way. 24 Essex-Class carriers built or under construction. 24. The number hangs in the room like a death sentence. Koga speaks in barely more than a whisper. "This cannot be correct." Kusaka steps forward. His voice is steady, but his jaw trembles. "It is." He moves to the chalkboard and writes the number, 24. Then beside it writes Japan's active fleet carrier count, 4. Shimada breaks the silence first. "Even if we still had our pilots, even if we had fuel, even if we had aircraft, how do we fight 24 carriers?" No one answers. Koga collapses into his chair. "When did this begin? How did they build so many? Where did we err?" Kusaka's reply is soft. "We believed they could not build them. We believed the war would end before they did. We believed incorrectly." A younger officer starts to protest. "Their workers are undisciplined. Their factories lack—" Kusaka slams a hand on the table. "Their factories built the future, while ours built tradition." It is the closest he has ever come to shouting in uniform. The symbol of a nation. January 1945, Ulithi Anchorage. The lagoon glitters under morning light as dozens of American warships sit at rest, their crews moving with confidence and calm. Supply ships unload crates, ammunition barges drift between hulls, and aircraft circle overhead like patient birds of prey. Amid them sits a formation of Essex-Class carriers: the USS Essex, the USS Lexington, the USS Intrepid, the USS Hornet, the USS Bunker Hill, the USS Bennington, the USS Randolph, and many, many more. Their decks bustle with aircraft, mechanics, and deck crew preparing for the next phase of the island-hopping campaign. The scale is overwhelming, a moving city of steel, oil, and machinery. On the bridge of the USS Ticonderoga, Captain Dixie Kiefer watches resupply crews unload crates marked in bold letters, "Standardized Parts, Essex Program." He smiles. Every carrier is interchangeable with the next. Every part fits every ship. Every aircraft can land on any deck. This is more than a fleet. It is a system, a mass-produced engine of war, a navy built not on tradition, but on production lines, not on elite skill, but on collective power. In 1941, Japan laughed at America's shipyards. In 1945, those shipyards defined the Pacific. The final understanding. March 1945, Tokyo. Bombs fall nightly now. The city glows orange with the reflected fire of burning districts. Air raid sirens wail over rooftops shattered by earlier raids. In a bunker beneath the Naval General Staff Building, Kusaka sits alone with a final intelligence brief. It is short. It needs no elaboration. American naval strength, overwhelming. Carrier fleet, decisive. Essex-Class, war-winning. Footsteps echo behind him. It is Shimada, older now, shoulders slumped. He sinks into the chair opposite. "We underestimated the wrong nation," Shimada whispers. Kusaka nods. "We underestimated the nation that could build faster than we could destroy." For the first time, neither man speaks with pride or defiance or fear. Only clarity. The Essex-class carriers were never just ships. They were the physical manifestation of American potential, the industrial heartbeat of a nation that refused to lose. And Japan, bound by old assumptions, never stood a chance against a country that could turn steel into carriers at a pace that defied belief. August 1945, Tokyo Bay. An American carrier, an Essex-class, looms offshore as Japan prepares to sign the instrument of surrender. Kusaka, watching from a transport deck, sees its flight deck lined with aircraft, sailors, and the quiet, unshakable might of American industry. He exhales, almost in awe. This is how it ended, not with a battle, but with a factory.